My friend's ex-wife gets his family's business shut down and burns their lives to the ground. Not what you may think. Welcome back to Reddit Chronicles. If you're new here, consider subscribing to help me feed my channel and grow my cat. And if you liked the video, do kindly give it a thumbs up to help me out. Let's get started. Sorry for the somewhat misleading title, but I couldn't resist. This story isn't about me, but two people I'm friends with. We'll call one Ray and one Justin. I'm posting this with Justin's permission, and he'll probably be reading the thread. Some background. Ray and Justin grew up in an extremely restrictive, insular, religious community that borders on being a cult. They both read a lot from a young age, even though reading outside of the religion's material was discouraged, and both of them grew increasingly skeptical and dissatisfied with their environment due to having this peek into the outside world. In high school, this shared mindset brought them together, and they started secretly dating. For context, dating was absolutely strictly verboten in the religious community. You went straight from single to married with zero in between. So when Justin and Ray's parents caught them dating, they forced them to get married. To be clear, it wasn't like they were having sex. They basically were driving around together and holding hands in the downtown square where all the other kids hung out. Very tame, sheltered kid stuff. Ray and Justin started living together as husband and wife. But unfortunately for their families, putting those two together doubled their resiliency, and together they cooked up the plan to get out. They set up a secret bank account at a bank outside the religious community's influence, since their families had access to their accounts, and everyone who worked at the main bank was also in the same community and gossiped about everyone's financial transactions. They started squirreling away money in small amounts the families wouldn't question being missing from their paychecks. When they were 20, they finally had enough money to start over. And they got out. They basically left their house in the dead of night with nothing but what they could fit in their car and uprooted to live across the country. Pretty quickly after they moved, they decided to get amicably divorced since they never wanted to be married anyway. They still lived together for a while and basically became something between platonic roommates and each other's only family. Over time, they started dating other people. Some partners were scared off by the weird relationship between them, but most got it and understood that Justin and Ray had basically bonded through mutual trauma. I also met both of them during this time, and we became close friends. This whole time, both of their families and other members of their community were relentlessly harassing them. People were showing up at their house at all hours, and they had reason to believe people were trying to steal their identity over the years, though they'd fortunately both put a freeze on their credit, so nothing ever came of it. Then Justin had a bad accident, a really bad accident. He was on his bike, and a car blew through a stop sign without slowing down and plowed right into him. He had to be rushed to the hospital and landed in the ICU. Ray was his emergency contact, and I was with her and some other friends when she got the call. I immediately drove her to the hospital with a couple of other people, and she was melting down, understandably. The hospital staff wouldn't let us all in when we got there, but they let Ray in. She came out periodically to let us know what was going on. Justin wasn't unconscious, but he was totally out of it and didn't seem to know she was there, probably from the painkillers, but she was convinced he had permanent, debilitating brain damage, and basically the group of us were just soothing her and reassuring her it would be fine. A friend of ours who worked at the hospital as an MRI tech was also stopping by when she could on her breaks and calming down Ray. We'd been there all night and part of the day at this point, and the medical staff was giving us reason to be hopeful. But things got worse. To this day, no one knows how they found out, but 14 hours after Justin's accident, his parents, uncles, and grandfather showed up. They immediately had all of us removed from the ICU, Ray included. Unfortunately, as his ex-wife, she was no longer his legal next of kin and had no rights against his blood family. At this point, she was absolutely hysterical and inconsolable. She was convinced Justin's family would hurt him. I'm ashamed to say that the three of us that were there with her thought she was overreacting. We all knew Ray and Justin had left a effed up situation, but it wasn't like his own family would do anything to impede his recovery. She was getting angry with us for trying to calm her down and tried to explain that according to their religion, she and Justin deserved punishment from God, and only the greatest suffering could prompt repenting and redemption. She said their families embraced this thinking and wanted them to suffer, because it would prove that they did the wrong thing by leaving, and suffering would drive them back to the fold. She said as long as Justin was with his family, he wouldn't be safe. Our friend who worked for the hospital came and found Ray at that point. She made Ray swear up and down she wouldn't tell anyone she told her this, because she could get in deep trouble for releasing privileged information to someone unauthorized. But she'd caught wind that Justin's parents were aggressively demanding the hospital release him into their care, and that they were involving lawyers. The hospital was currently refusing because Justin wasn't stable enough to leave, but our friend warned Ray, as soon as Justin got to be stable, or the lawyers scared the hospital enough, it's possible the parents would be able to take Justin. This shocked the rest of us. Realizing his parents were not only willing to remove Justin from the hospital that had saved his life in the condition he was still in, but were actively trying to do it, made us really get, for the first time, why Ray was going out of her head with fear. At this point, Ray snapped into do-or-die mode. Convinced that Justin was about to literally die if she didn't act, she decided she would do everything in her power to start a fire at the home so that Justin's family would want to run back to put it out. And this wasn't too hard, because she had kept a lot of dirt on the whole community she came from. Like a madwoman, she started blowing the whistle all over Justin's family. She called the IRS's fraud hotline and detailed all the ways the family business was committing tax fraud. She submitted an ATF tip about how the same family business was illegally selling firearms without a license and without following any of the proper protocols, and was knowingly selling guns to convicted felons. She also reported Justin's mom's unlicensed daycare business, which was apparently extremely shady, including having over 30 children packed into one house, with Justin's mom as the only adult, and many of the childcare duties being farmed out to Justin's 12 and 14-year-old sisters. She called CPS on Justin's uncles and his parents for keeping their children out of school, and for physical abuse in one uncle's case. In all of these reports, she provided extensive details. She finished her calls and emails, and then she waited. We all waited for several hours, and nothing happened. Then, miraculously, Justin became lucid enough to understand what was going on and make his own decisions, and he kicked his family out again. From there began a slow but steady path to recovery. In all the relief and excitement to see Justin on the mend, we'd almost forgotten about Ray's campaign of desperation until a couple weeks later, when the screaming voice wails started pouring in to both of them. First, the business was being investigated by the IRS. Then it was being investigated for illegal firearms dealing. Then the daycare was getting investigated. At first, Ray felt a little guilty, but then she was like, you know what? No regrets. They would have killed Justin. From what they've been able to piece together in the year and a half since this happened, the business has gone under, and the daycare is shuttered. The uncle is 6 months into a new 5-year prison sentence for firearms possession. CPS investigated, which scared the shit out of the family, but nothing really came of it, which is especially sad in the case of the cousins being physically abused. That said, the parents are now too scared to keep the kids home from school, and with the unlicensed daycare shut down, the mom's not exploiting her daughter's labor anyway, so she has no incentive to keep them home. So Justin's little siblings are at least getting their education. Justin and Ray are both happy and thriving. Justin, unfortunately, will never recover from the accident. He has some permanent neurological damage that results in tremors, but he's pumped to be alive. He can work a full-time job, he can still be pretty physically active, and as far as I'm convinced, he wins. TLDR, kooky abusive family tries to remove my friend from critical medical care because reasons, and his ex-wife hits the panic button that burns their lives to the ground. Whenever multiple people are doing absurd things, you can bet some kind of cult is involved. My lawyer and I laid a trap for my adulterous alcoholic wife in my divorce. When I got divorced, my alcoholic wife of 18 years had started another affair, this time with her addictions counselor. My lawyer and I laid a trap for them. Just in case you don't know, intimate relations between a counselor and the patient are very frowned upon by the regulatory bodies, and I was more than pissed after putting her through rehab, $25,000, which I didn't have to do, only to have her fall back onto her old behavior. Shortly before the divorce was finalized, I filed a complaint with the state body licensing health professions. Knowing they were in some peril because of their unprofessional relationship, I had already gotten him fired from a major teaching hospital. She backed off her exorbitant demands. I paid her a very modest settlement, kept the house, got custody of the 3 teenage kids, plus got child support. Her lawyer naturally included a clause in the divorce where I had to agree to not say anything negative about her lover and their relationship. But the lawyer effed up and never asked if I had already filed charges, and thus didn't require me to rescind them. Her lawyer had assured I was just bad-mouthing them to neighbors and friends, and it never occurred to the lawyer that we were doing much more. When the Board of Health Professions responded to my complaint shortly after the divorce was finalized, I told them it would take a subpoena for me to testify. A subpoena trumps an agreement in a divorce settlement. They were happy to oblige. They stripped his license and placed him on a register of sanctioned health professionals. He never worked again. They were broke in a handful of years, and she divorced him when the money ran out. In the interim, his mother had died, leaving a fair-sized estate, so it took longer than I expected. Oh, and the frosting on the cake was that his wife and I traded notes, notably hotel receipts from the time of their affair, that helped each of us in our respective divorces. Justice was served. If you want more where that came from, simply click on one of these boxes right here. And if you liked the video, I assume you did since you're still here, share it with your friends to see what they think. And of course, if you haven't already, click the kitty to subscribe and you'll never miss another video. I'll see you in the next episode of Reddit Chronicles.